Morning, brother. How are you? Good, good. So that was all your family over here yesterday evening. It's good to see that. That's encouraging to me. Is your son married? Is he married? Okay, that's his girl. Okay.
He don't know yet.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
I got son Joseph this year, but they couldn't make it to this.
Okay. Oh yeah. Take what you want. They're on the back pew. Yeah. Take what you want. Oh yeah, I don't do that. Yeah. I only call on men, and I'll never pull on that. In this setting, I never call on people. But yeah. Yeah. I think it's an impactful thing, though, for people to consider. Yeah. Because somebody didn't teach you, you wouldn't be here. Well, good morning. It's a pleasure to be here in Owasso this morning, and we're grateful for your presence again, beginning this seminar maybe tonight or last night. I hope you enjoyed the introduction, first lesson. I'm going to give people just a chance to come inside and take their seat. If you were not here last night, there is a QR code on the back of the screen behind me, and we'd like you to take your phone and use your camera and place it on that QR code, hit that yellow link. And that allows us to send evangelism material to you. If you don't do QR codes, we have these clipboards up here. And since the days of Adam and Eve, we've used clipboards. They work very well. And all you got to do is put your name and email address on the clipboard. And so if you need the clipboard, in fact, I'll ask this brother right here if he can, do you mind just circulating that? If you need it, just raise your hand. He'll bring it to you and get your name and email address. YouTube, please open your YouTube app, subscribe. House to House, School of Evangelism. We have 160 plus videos that are available for training purposes. They train. They're 1 to 5 minute videos, which means that I cater to the TikTok culture of short attention spans. And so I'm trying my very best to provide the materials that you need, the training that you need to be an effective soul winner. So there are 160 videos. There's a playlist that is coded to our system, which is our 6-step system. And I'll be talking about that momentarily. Again, there's a table out back. If you want any of the materials, you're welcome to peruse the table. Unfortunately, we do have to have some charge for the materials because it costs us to produce the materials. I wish I could just give them to you, but I cannot. And so there is, just see... my daughter's with us this morning. Her name is Hannah, Jamie, Keno, or my wife, Nicole. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. The most difficult part of evangelism is not the Bible study. This may surprise you, but the Bible study is the easiest part of evangelism. The most difficult part of evangelism is making a contact and prospecting the contact. In other words, you've got to get them to sit around the kitchen table. You've got to get them to sit down and open the Word of God. Brethren, if you cannot get a person to sit down and open their Bible and conduct a study, you cannot bring him to the cross. It's like a gardener. If the gardener cannot attain the soil and till the soil, it doesn't matter that he has seed. He could have all the seed the world's ever seen. He could have the best corn seed. He could have the best bean seed. He could have the best seed that the world's ever known. But if he has not the soil nor the ability to till the soil, that is to prepare it with compost and fertilizer, get out the rocks. You know, that soil, if you've ever gardened, it's beautiful. I remember I've spent many of my years gardening, and there is nothing like the springtime. When you spend time preparing the soil, and literally when you walk out the morning you're going to plant the seed, you can smell it. It smells so good because you know it's ready. If you can't do that evangelistically, it doesn't matter that you have your Bible because you have no one to teach. I want you to look at the model behind me because this is the core of our school. This model here has been developed from your New Testament evangelistic pattern. How did the church grow in the first century? How did the church, create an atmosphere where they could reach out to their community, to their people. So every successful business has a model. I want you to think of the company you work for. Let me ask a question. Is there a model somewhere? Somewhere on the break room, maybe in training, maybe posted all over the company, there's this model. You know, if you work for Chick-fil-A, there's a model. It's posted everywhere. The model is a pipeline. It shows how things move from step one all the way through the process. Ford Motor Company has a model. In fact, in that model, they're going to have some term that is similar to our first step, which is contacts. Let me give you an example. The airlines call them passengers. Without them, they go bankrupt. All right? The dentist calls them patients. Without them, they have no practice. The Army calls them recruits. Without them, they have no military. They have no unit. All right? Walmart calls them customers. Without them, they have no retail store. Teachers call them students. You know, you just go through the Lions Club calls them members. But wherever you look, there's a name for step one. Okay, we're just going to call them contacts. Let me be clear. If a church has no contacts, you don't have a church. Because a church is made of people. And that's what we're talking about is people. So a church, number one, the first thing a church has to do is develop contacts. Brethren, if you don't learn how to do step one, it doesn't matter that you have a good preacher, and I'm sure you do. It doesn't matter you have a good elder. It doesn't matter you have a beautiful building. None of this matters at all. If you don't have step one, you fail. In fact, as we analyze successful churches and those who struggle, and one of the purposes of our regional trainers, Keno Shrum's with us, is that we go back to churches that struggle, and we call them refreshes. We refresh the system. We find out, we diagnose, we troubleshoot. So our regional trainers sit down with elders, and what we want to do is find out, okay, where are you struggling at? You know, diagnostic. It's the same thing. You troubleshoot. You find out, okay, why is the air conditioning not working? Okay, why is the car not running? And you just start with step one, right? And you walk yourself through it. All right, here's some inside baseball. Okay, here's some inside baseball. Overwhelming. Almost every single time a church is struggling, point one, they're not doing it. If you do not succeed in this first point, you fail. And so if it was me, if I was an elder, if I was a preacher, I'd put almost all my marbles in step number one. I'd put all my resources, I'd be right here in step one. Because if you don't train your church how to achieve success in step one, nothing else matters. I know you're focused on step three. I realize step four stands out, but let me again assure you, step three is the simplest thing you'll do in the model. And I'll prove it to you. Step four, that's not where the challenge is. The challenge is in those first two steps. Now, once you develop contacts, you got to learn how to till the soil. The people need to be, the heart must be tilled. Now, we don't, you know, every business has some tool they use, right, to till the soils of the heart. We use love, grace, mercy, compassion, forgiveness. That's the fruits of the Spirit. We till with those fruits. Now, the Army, let me tell you how they do it. You pass by a recruiter. Now, you notice where they put the recruiting stations. They don't put them in Timbuktu. They put them where the population centers are at. They're going to put them in a mall. They're going to put them somewhere where the people, right, they can get contacts. So think about it. The Army gets this. And what does the Army do when they make contact with a young man or, you know, they see somebody or a young lady coming? They're going to make contact with them. They're going to talk to them. But then they're going to say this. You know, there's a $20,000 signing bonus. What are they doing? They're prospecting. They're going to try to put something out there to make you want to sign on the dotted line. The dotted line is that final Bible study where they sit down, they go over the contract, and then you sign, you're baptized. They get you, right? They know how to do it. What about the University of Tennessee, the University of Oklahoma, University of Texas? There's a reason they call them prospects. What does the coach do? He says, listen, look at the stand. Look at the stadium. Look at our facilities. Look at our fan base. Look at our history. And, oh, by the way, there's something called the NIL deal. We'll give you $1 million if you sign on the dotted line. They're prospecting. The car dealer knows how to do it. Husbands, you ever prospect your wife? Don't you know how to do it? I know how to prospect mine. I know exactly, she's back there smiling. I know how to do it. I know what my wife likes, and I know what she doesn't like. And so everybody does this. We do it in our own ways. So what do you do at the church to prospect? Most of our churches are doing very little to nothing. And then we wonder why they don't want to come. We wonder why they don't stay. Brethren, if you don't have a model for church growth, first of all, your church isn't growing. Okay, second of all, if you don't train the church members what the model is and how it works, you're not growing. And this is, be honest, this is time for honesty. Honesty says this: most of our churches members have not a clue how to accomplish this. They don't even know what the model is. And what's sad is you cannot work for Chick-fil-A without knowing the model. They will ingrain it in your mind. Those teenagers they hire, you ever know, they're so good at what they do. It is the best fast, there's no doubt. I know you love your Brahms, but I'm telling you, when it comes to customer service, there isn't anything that compares to Chick-fil-A. They know exactly, and I'll tell you why, because I know store owners. My son has a contract with the Chick-fil-A. He works with, he has his own lawn and landscape business. So he knows the owner, he knows the manager. You walk in, he says, Dad, the model is everywhere. They drill it into their employees. So we've got to develop a model. Her name is Brandy Fleming. I got in front of the church. I said, all right, this morning, church. I said, we're going to do something different. I said, the one thing that you've got that I don't have, there's one thing, church, that you all have right now that your preacher does not have. You're better at it than he is. You know what it is? It's contacts. You have contacts and he doesn't. You know why? Because he's surrounded by you. So he goes to church with you. Okay, you're not a contact. Guess where you go to school? You have contacts. You know people. How many of you right now know 10 people that are lost? Raise your hand. You know 10 people. Anybody? Okay, so Dan, look around you. You know, sometimes preachers don't raise their hand because you literally don't know 10 people that are lost because you're surrounded by the saved. And you look at your preacher and say, why isn't our preacher evangelizing? Why aren't you doing your job? See, your job is to bring him contact. Your job is to create contact. So I went before the church and I said, this morning, church, I need your help. I said, I need contacts. I said, and I can't do my job if you don't do your job. I said, I need to know who you know. Who's your neighbor? Who do you go to school with? Who's your family? Who are the people in your sphere of influence that are lost? And I said, when they go through a life event, I want you to bring me their name. So Brandy, not everybody participates. Some of us kind of like we sit on the sideline. We just hope don't pick me, right? But no, Brandy Fleming's not like that. She sits in the pew and she says, hey, I've got somebody. And she walks down the aisle. She hands a piece of paper to me. She says, hey, Rob, I've got somebody. Her name is Sharon Fisher. She's a coworker. She's very disgruntled. And Rob, I think we could reach her. And so immediately, turn your books to page 105. Everybody open your books, page 105. So let's look at how this is the operational model. You want to know how to make it actionable? This is not just some talking point. So I'm going to get you working. And what I mean by that is we have got to put something in place where you can act. And I do that starting out with my prospect list. I need to know, who do you know? I need to know who it is that we can reach out to. And not only do I need to know it, you need to know it. Because if you don't know it, we can't do anything. Because this is not about Rob Whitacre or Dan Schnell doing it. This is about the Owasso Church doing it. So our prospect list is a public printed list. And on that public printed list, we put out the names of people that we're trying to reach. And so you don't have to call it prospect list. You can call it the neighbor list, the love list, the prayer list, whatever you want to call it, right? But for our teaching purposes, these are the prospects that we're trying to reach. So we put on the name of that, Sharon Fisher, relationship, friend of Brandy Fleming, description, she's discouraged, had surgery, recovering, and then an address. And we strike that box that says multiple, which means that we're not going to have one person reach out to Sharon Fisher. We're all going to do it. Everybody. So she's going to feel the love of the entire church of Christ. So how are we going to do that? Well, not only are we going to pray for her, we're going to start sending cards. Lots of cards. These are called compassion cards. And we're going to send these cards out in bulk. In other words, we're going to send her at least 2, that's minimum, but more like 3 cards per day for 3 to 4 weeks. We're going to send these cards. Lots of cards. It's very organized. My wife is going to talk more about it, but this is a very important part of this school. This tool is responsible for more baptisms than anything else we do. And so we're going to flood people with love and let them know we care about them. So here's what happened. the church began to send cards. We did it very organized. We're going to send a few out on Monday, few out on Tuesday, few out on Wednesday, few out on, and she's going to get cards throughout the week. She goes out to her mailbox. She opens it up. She reads the card. She's touched by the message. She puts it on her mantle. She goes out the next day, gets these cards. Oh, she's touched. She puts them on her kitchen counter. She goes out the next day, gets more cards. Oh, she's touched. She puts them on her desk at work. And every day she gets cards from the Willette Church of Christ. And people are writing to her, and they're saying, we love you, we're praying for you. It brings her out of a dark place. How many people right now are in a dark place in life? They're in a dark place, meaning that they feel there's no hope. There's no hope at all. And they do not see the big picture. And they're depressed, and maybe they're contemplating, maybe they're even contemplating the end of their own life. And if someone would reach out to them and love them and show them, there are people actually that care about them, it pulls them out of that dark place. Well, Sharon Fisher went to talk to Brandy at work. And she said, Brandy, she says, I don't know what to say. She said, I've got like 40, 50 cards. She says, every day your church sends me 3 or 4 cards. She says, they pulled me out of a dark place. I thought no one cared. She said, it makes me feel better. She said, would you think, I need to thank that church. How do I do it? And she said, why don't you just come visit? And she says, okay. So on Sunday morning, she actually, her and her husband, they showed up. Nicole and I walked up to him, and I said, hey, my name's Rob, my wife, Nicole. He says, my name's Jimmy Fisher. This is my wife, Sharon. Hey, that's them. And I'd never met them. I said, well, we're so glad you guys are here. We've been praying for you all. Sharon, you doing okay? She says, I'm doing a little better. I said, well, just so thankful you're here. She said, are you the preacher? I said, I am. She said, will you thank the church for all the cards they've sent me? I said, absolutely. So I got in the pulpit. It was right before Bible class. I said, hey, church, we got visiting with us this morning, Jimmy and Sharon Fisher. And they want to thank you for all the cards they've received. Well, the church has surrounded them with love, right? I mean, everybody went up and introduced themselves, talked to them. We went through the worship service. After worship service, so I've got an order of things that I do. And I'm a very robotic person, meaning a methodical person. I do the same thing about every time. And I walked up to him and I said, hey, Jimmy and Sharon. I said, we got a little custom here at this church. She said, well, what is it? I said, we always invite visitors out to eat. I said, we love to eat. I said, why don't you guys go with us? And it's our treat. I said, would you like to do it? And Sharon said, well, yeah, that'd be nice. And Jimmy says, well, I'd like to eat. I said, okay. So we got in the car, went down the road, went over to the little restaurant. And guess what I'm going to do? I'm very methodical. Who was here last night and remembers? I'm going to use my introductory questions. I start with question number 1. I said, hey, Jimmy, where are you from? He said, I'm a local boy. I said, well, tell me about growing up here in Macon County. So he tells me about growing up, you know. I said, Sharon, where are you from? She says, I'm from the Bayou. That's all that needed to be said. For the next 45 minutes, I heard about everything you can learn about Louisiana. You know, Cajun food, beignets, alligators, and, you know, all this, you know. She is so passionate. I mean, she loves to talk, and I just listened. I didn't get to question number 2. We didn't have time for it. And so we finished our meal together, and I said, man, we've really enjoyed this. They said, we did too. And I said, I'll tell you what. I said, I hope we can do it again. She said, oh, we'll be back. It's great. It's what I wanted. And so I got to the church that night. I said, hey, church, I'll remember Jimmy and Sharon Fisher this morning. I'm pretty open with the church. And they said, yeah. I said, I'll tell you what. I said, I need you to do something for me. Go back to the card room and get the cards and say thank you for visiting. Come back soon. I said, I need everybody writing cards. I don't care what team you're on. I said, everybody, just go do it. I don't want the form letter from the secretary, no disrespect intended. I want personal handwritten cards. That's exactly what happened. The church flooded them with cards. Now, after a few days, I got an email from Brandy. I saved it because I knew it was a teaching moment. You ready? Hey, Rob, I received a message from Sharon's husband, Jimmy. He said he and Sharon had received at least 4 cards a day thanking them for visiting or wishing Sharon well. He said it's just the type of church they've been looking for, one that would take care of Sharon if anything ever happened to him. He said, Rob, he's still praying and trying to let God lead them to where they need to be. I tried to be very encouraging. I offered to have a Bible study sometime or answer any questions. I welcomed them back at any time. Now, Rob, I wasn't expecting him to message me back so quickly with the question, you have to be a member there to take communion. Now, Rob, I know if he's asking that question, he needs to know a whole lot more. Any suggestions? Suggestion number 1. Ready? Don't Answer the question. Do not chase that rabbit. We don't chase rabbits. We do not answer questions. That's not what Jesus did. I said, what you need to do, Brandy, is get them to come back. I said, we're this close to a Bible study. Sure enough, Sunday morning, they walked back through the doors. They sat down. After services, I walked up. I'm very methodical. I do the same thing every time. Hey, Jimmy, Sharon, glad to have you back. Yeah, we really enjoyed the service. I said, good. I said, I tell you what, we have another custom here at this church. She said, what is it? I said, we always invite visitors to our home for dinner. I said, we love to get to know people. I said, my wife is the best cook in Macon County. My daughter, best dessert maker you'll ever meet. I said, why don't you guys come over sometime and we'll visit? Sharon said, man, I'd love that. I said, Jimmy? He said, well, I like to eat. I said, good. I said, come on, Jimmy. And so we made a time. Now they're coming to the house. That's where I want them. I want them in my house. Because if I put you in my house, I know what's going to happen. It's 100%. It never fails. And I know that's a strong statement. Go ask my wife. If this ever fails, it works every time. So they walk in my house. I got one mission. There's one thing I want. I will get it. When we sit around the table, we just talk. And it's amazing how quickly people open up. I mean, within just mere minutes of them sitting in our home, nothing's off limits. We're talking about the most intimate parts of life, problems or struggles, and struggles with their children, struggles in life. I mean, it's just like they've known us forever. They just open up like a book. And we're going through this, and then Nicole serves the meal. We walk into the dining room, and I'm asking questions, my introductory questions, and here's number 2. I said, Jimmy, what do you do for a living? He said, I'm a security guard at Bonnell. He's not a big talker. I said, Sharon, what do you do for a living? She says, well, I'm a kindergarten teacher. That's all that needed to be said. So now for the next 45 minutes, I hear about every student in the classroom. No one is left out. Little Billy, he lives in the truck with his dad. Little Bobby, best meal he gets is at school. And she tells me about the state testing. Y'all know about the state testing, kindergartners? I didn't know we tested kindergartners, but they do. She said, Rob, they're nervous. All we do is test these kindergartners all the time. Rob, I can't teach because we're testing all the time. And she said, Rob, they're having anxiety attacks in the class. I'm having an anxiety attack. I had one with her that night. And so she's passionate about her children. I just listen. That's what just listen to people. Don't interrupt them. Don't talk. Listen to them. If you listen, I'll tell you what they'll do. Hey, Rob, yeah? We need to talk about something. I said, what's going on? She said, well, I want you to know we are religious people. I said, well, I figured you were. You're good people. I said, I'm glad you're religious. She said, Rob, we go to this big community church down here at Westmoreland. And she said, Rob, she says, you know, I've taught Bible class there. Rob, in the summer, we go on mission trips. She said, we take our vacation time. We go work in the children's homes. I said, well, that God loves children. That's wonderful. And she said, Rob, since I've been sick, I had surgery 2 months ago. I've not got one card, one visit, or one phone call from my church. And Rob, this is our first time. I said, what do you mean? She said, we have never been invited into anyone's home. She said, I don't even know where my preacher lives. And she said, we have so enjoyed tonight. I said, Sharon, I am so glad you're here. I said, you and Jimmy are such good people. I said, in fact, it's getting late. Let's just do this again. Why don't you come back next week and we'll have a meal and talk and get to know each other a little bit more. And she said, man, I'd love that. I said, Jimmy, you want to come back? I like to eat. I said, good, Jimmy. And I said, Jimmy, what would you like? He says, will you make lasagna? And Nicole said, yes. I said, Jimmy, it's her specialty. At least it became her specialty. I said, doesn't really matter what it is. I said, she'll cook it. And so come on back. And so they came on back. Now we're in the living room. We're next week, right? I've got one mission. It always happens. You just have to be patient. And I'm sitting in the living room and said, hey, Jimmy. I said, what do you think about our nation? He said, well, I love America, Rob. I said, how are we doing? He said, terrible. He said, Rob, our nation is falling apart. I said, I know. I said, what's going on, Jimmy? He said, oh, Rob. He said, look at the murder rate. He said, this culture's changing so fast. I said, I know, Jimmy. Tell me more about it. He said, Rob, he says, we've kicked God out of schools. We've kicked God out of government. We've kicked God out of society. Look what's happened to us, Rob. We don't pray anymore. I said, I know. Rob, do you know what's all in the book of Revelation? No, that I did not know that. And I said, well, Jimmy, tell me more about Revelation. He said, Rob, it's 666, Armageddon, Battle of Megiddo, 1,000-year reign. He said, Rob, it's all about the happen now, earthquakes, volcanoes, the signs. Haven't you read the Left Behind series? Brethren, we did that in 60 seconds. Do you realize the book of Revelation is the last book of your Bible for good reason? We don't start in Revelation. And I'm not chasing that rabbit. And I'm not going, I just pulled back and I hesitated. Not going there. Because there's no good that will come from me engaging him on the book of Revelation. But he did open the door. Hey, Jimmy, I know how to solve all the problems our nation has. What do you mean? I said, well, I know what the solution is. Would you like to know? He said, sure. I said, I just so happen to have, let me see if I have them. These little booklets are called Back to the Bible. And I said, in fact, we've got them set up right over here at the table. And why don't we walk over here? Would it be okay if we read the Bible just for a little bit? He said, well, sure. I said, well, let's sit down. Nicole, grab the Bibles. John 8:32. And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. I said, Jimmy, what sets you free? He said, the truth. I said, put it in the blank. You know what's ironic? What's ironic about this situation is that I didn't tell you something. The week before this happened, Jimmy conveyed a message to his wife. And his wife conveyed it to Brandy, and Brandy conveyed it to me. This was the message. Now, I don't want to do no Bible study. Guess what he's doing? A Bible study. You know, I never ask him. I don't ask people, would you like to have a Bible study? You know what they're going to say every time? Every single time. No, I don't ask for him. And now we're doing one. And he's loving it. And Jimmy and Sharon, they're walking through the study. They're getting the answers. They're reading their Bible. Couldn't have gone better. You could not ask for more. We finished the study. Sharon makes this little fist. She hits the table. She gets a monobrow. I mean, you can tell she's visibly upset. I said, Sharon, you okay? She says, I'm angry, Rob. I'm upset. And I said, well, why? She said, I want to know why. I've gone to church all my life. She says, and I've learned more about the Bible in this one study than I've had my entire life. Rob, I didn't even know there's a difference between the Old and New Testament. I said, would you like to learn more? She said, I sure would. I said, come back next week. And she said, I want to. I said, Jimmy, would you come back next week? He said, well, was she cooking any of those desserts? I said, yes, Hannah's a good dessert maker. What do you want? He said, peanut butter pie. I said, it's her specialty. Actually, it is. It's very good. And I said, yes, come on back. They came on back for the next one. Guess what we did? A Bible study. They loved it. Sharon said, Jimmy, why aren't we taking the Lord's Supper every first day of the week? He said, I don't know. It's right there in the Bible, Jimmy. You know, most people have never done a Bible study in their life. You know, most members of the church have never done a Bible study in their life. We got to the third study the next week. We ate at dinner. We always eat. We're sitting there doing that third study. This couldn't go better. And they're getting it. You can tell they're really taking it in. And Sharon Fisher looks at me. She looks at her husband. She gets it. She said, Rob, I think Jimmy and I need to be. Jimmy said, you just wait 1 minute, preacher. Are you trying to tell us we're going to hell? And I looked at Jimmy. I said, Jimmy, did I say that? Did I even hint about? I mean, he said, well, no. I said, Jimmy, I said, I'll tell you what. I said, if you're doing what the Bible says, you're going to heaven. If you're missing something, we'll fix it. I said, no, I don't know. I said, why don't we just keep studying the Bible, and you just tell me if you've done what this book says. And he said, that's fair. We studied another 10 minutes, and he looks up, and he says, Rob, I think Sharon and I need to be baptized. I said, I know. I said, let's do it right now. We took him to the baptistry, took Jimmy there, took Sharon there, baptized him in the Christ. I mean, I was learning so much about evangelism. I learned a lot from my wife. I learned some very important lessons during this study. And as we're developing this model at the church, what I'm seeing is how important prospecting is. Let me share with you a few photos. Behind me, that's Sharon Fisher within 1 year of her conversion. Brethren, she is doing a Bible study. This is Betty McCarter on the other side doing a Bible study. They're on a mission trip with us. This is the man last night, Richard Pratt. He's doing a Bible study. On the other side of the table is Jimmy Fisher. He's doing a Bible study. Brother, I want to know how it is. We got brand new Christians who know enough to do a Bible study, and those of us who've been in the church for 30 years, we don't know enough. Unacceptable. It's unacceptable. I've learned a lot from new converts through the years. Let me give you the lesson I've learned from new converts. They'll teach you things. New converts, I've learned this from new converts. New converts don't know that Bible studies don't work, but we do. Oh, this doesn't work here. You can't do it. It just won't work for us. The new converts don't know that, and thank God they don't, because they're trying to save souls. If you want the theme of this lesson, I hope you'll write it down. This is the theme. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. That's the theme. That's prospecting. And if we don't practice step 2, there is no step 3. And it's my wife that taught me how to do step 2. I was not very good at this. I'm a pretty linear guy. I go from one step to another step, and I'm just right there. Let's do the Bible study. And if I can't do it, I just go to the next person. But what I didn't realize that if you do not take time and learn how to treat people with love and compassion and forgiveness, if you'll do that, you'll get your study. Some people it takes weeks, some it takes days, some years. But I never give up on people. Take your Bibles, if you would, Acts 2:47. Let's walk through the Scripture and let's look at, where did we learn this? How did I learn this? All right, so Acts 2:47, praising God and having the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to the church daily such as should be saved. So let's look at this very carefully. Any church you can join is not the church of Christ, because the church is one that God adds you to. That is a universal teaching that must be taught and emphasized in our pulpits. I've heard that since I was a little boy, that the church is one that God adds you to. And that word added is key in Acts 2:47. But there's something else that you learn in Acts 2:47. Here it is. And having the favor of the people. Have you ever stopped to think about that early church and how it grew? That early church had the favor of the people. Let me tell you who didn't have the favor of the people. The Pharisees, their church, they didn't have the favor of the people. The Sadducees, their church, they did not have the favor of the people. The Herodians, they didn't have the favor of the people. The Zealots, they didn't have the favor of the people. The Essenes, they didn't have the favor of the people. None of these other Jewish sects were loved by the people. But you know who the people loved? Do you know what the people? They loved the church of Christ. You ever stopped to ask why? Like, why did they love the church of Christ? What about the church stood out? There's something about the church of Christ that stood out to the people that made the people have favor. Well, let's look. The word favor says grace on the part of the giver. They're a graceful church, kind. They're a kind church. They're an acceptable church. This is a unique church that the people had never seen before. It wasn't interested in political power. It wasn't interested in social power. It wasn't interested in elite, power. It wasn't interested in just the traditions and binding it. None of that. Rejected all of that. Look at what that church did. And the multitude of them that believed were of one heart and one soul. Neither was there any among them that lacked. For as many as possessors of lands and houses sold them, distribution was made to every man according as he had need. That's favor. So let me ask, is that what the people think about this church? Let me ask another penetrating question. What do the people that live around the Owasso Church of Christ, what do the people that live around you think about the Church of Christ? What's their opinion? It matters. Because if they don't know you're here, if they don't know you care, they're not coming. Here's what I noticed, all right? So I'm going to give you an example. David Shannon, I was going to take him flying one day. He's the president of Freed Hardman. This is before he became president. He was preaching at Mount Juliet. And I said, David and I were supposed to fly. The ceiling got too low. And I said, David, we can't go up. And he said, well, let's talk evangelism. I said, tell me something you've learned. He said, Rob, he says, the Mount Juliet Church of Christ is a mighty church. I said, it is. Big building, right off the road. You can't miss it. It's right off a main road. Huge building. He said, I wanted to know what the community thought about our church, so I sent the people out. I said, let's come together Saturday. Let's go out with one question, and let's ask this question. What do you think of the Mount Juliet Church of Christ? What do you think of it? That's a good question. I said, what were the answers? He said, we went to a house right behind our church building, and I knocked on the door. What do you think about that Mount Juliet Church of Christ? Mount Juliet what? Oh, the Mount Juliet Church of Christ, the one right here. Who are you now? Where'd you come from? Mount Juliet Church of Christ. The steeple in your backyard, the shadow, that church. Oh, is that who you are? Brethren, we'll never grow if the people don't know who you are. You know, a lot of our communities have no idea who we are. They don't know what we believe. They don't know we exist. And worse yet, in some communities, we have a negative reputation, which is generational to repair. And so what you learn about the early church is that the people loved them. They knew who they were. That word favor, Luke 2:52. Jesus increased in wisdom, in stature, in favor with God and man. What characteristics did Jesus have that made him so effective as an evangelist? He had the favor of man. He was a social person. People loved to be around him. They loved to hang out with him. He wasn't a hermit. People didn't avoid him. When they saw Jesus come, they flocked to him. So what about you? So when they see you coming, what do? And what are you known for? Are you known to be Mr. Grumpy? Known to be Gabby Gossip? Angry Fred? Are you Smiley Sam? Who are you? Because what you reflect in your communities is how people judge the church of Christ. So some say, oh, Rob, now, what you're talking about. In this society, listen, there's so many people out here, social media, this doesn't work. You can't develop this type of favor today. I could not disagree more. In fact, I don't think there's been a society that's more susceptible to favor than ours, and I'll prove it to you. Let's look. Genesis 2:18. Let's go all the way back to the beginning. All right. The Lord said, it is not good that man should be alone, for I will make for him a helpmate. So let's talk about human, let's talk about how God wired up humanity. When he wired us up, what did he create inside of us? An innate desire to be with people. Okay, it's hard to be by yourself. So, you know, I notice when a husband or a wife, when they lose their spouse, it's a very difficult road because you're now by yourself. And what I notice is that those widows and widowers, they love to come to church. You know why? People. They love to be around people. They love to see the people. And if there's a function, they're going to be there because they love to be around the people. That's how God made us. It's hard to be by yourself. And so I want you to consider something. I want you to take this fact. It is a fact. In fact, let me prove it to you again. COVID. What happened during COVID? Well, we locked people in their houses for 3 months. Don't come out. What happened to society when we did that? Murder rate goes up. Domestic assaults go up. Sexual assaults go up. Drug abuse goes up. Abuse of pharmaceuticals goes up. Everything that's about alcohol, you know, it's essential service after all, it goes up. You know, all these things that destroy society, what happened to people? It ruined us. I mean, it set us back years. Because you cannot isolate people like that. People need to be around people. And it does something to you mentally. It does something to you emotionally. And guess what we did? So during that period of time, right, this is what we did, right? Everyone learned how to use what? Social media. We became experts. I mean, we have 90-year-old sisters in the church that learned how to Zoom. I mean, brother, if a 90-year-old sister can learn how to Zoom, we can all learn how to Zoom. I mean, everybody's using social media. And so these things become very popular, right? And these creators, they become, you know, instant million and billionaires, right? Some of the richest people on earth. Why is that? Because we're what? We're social creatures, and we needed a social outlet. And this provided us an opportunity, right? To have friends, to talk to them, to interact with them. And so this becomes now the norm of our social interaction in this nation and in the world. But I've got news for you tonight. I don't care how good these social media apps become. I don't care how good social media technology advances. They can never replace a warm-blooded human being. Never. Brethren, do you know there are some things you don't put on Facebook? At least you shouldn't. Did you know there are some things you don't tweet about? You know, as I think about humanity, there are some things that we just need a warm-blooded human being to talk to. Now, let me tell you about Jimmy and Sharon Fisher. I'm going to give you 4 things I learned about evangelism from that Bible study. Okay, I gave you 3 last night. We have 7 principles our school operates around. I'm going to give you the other 4. I'm going to do this very quickly. All right, number 4, here it is. I learned that you need to open your house up and invite people inside. Brother, your house is not a prison cell. Put out your welcome mat. Unlock the deadbolt. Brother, let's learn how to treat people. Open up your house. So I'll ask a personal question. When is the last time you invited a non-Christian in your home? I'm not talking about grandma at Thanksgiving or Uncle Fred. I'm talking about someone in your community, someone you work with, and you invited him in your home and you interacted with him. It's biblical. Acts 5:42, and daily in the temple, in every house, they ceased not to teach and preach Jesus. Where did they teach people about Jesus? In their home. Acts 2:46, and they continuing daily with one accord in the temple, and breaking bread from house to house, did eat their meat with singleness and gladness of heart. Where did they do it? In their home. Acts 20:20, I kept back nothing that was profitable unto you, but I've showed you publicly and taught you publicly and from house to house. Brethren, why don't we just do what they did? Let me give you something to think about. Let me give you a theologic principle. You ready? Ready for some theology? If you want to be who they were, you got to do what they did. That's Rob's theology. I know it doesn't sound very technical. They'd probably laugh at me in the schools, but I'm a pretty simple guy. And I look at those early Christians. I said, okay, I want to be who they were. I want to grow like they grew. I want to just be what they were, so I better do what they did. And so here's something else to think about. You can't be who they were if you don't do what they did. So we better open our homes and have non-Christians inside. We better learn how to reach out to the people that we work with, that we go to school with. And I realize you're tired. I get it. I know you go through life and life just wears on you. But if you're possessed by your possessions, and if muchness and minniness consume you, and if we have allowed ourselves to become a slave to money, and we're no longer the master of it, if we've allowed ourselves to be controlled by this environment, brethren, we have missed the point of Christianity. So ladies, I'm speaking to you right now. You need to let your husband encourage him. Open up your home. Because if you don't open up your home, he won't do it. Because you're the keeper of it. This starts with ladies. So this lesson is really focused on our ladies. Because if our ladies are not participating, if our ladies say, no, you're not having anybody in this house, guess what? He's not having anybody in the house. Because you're the keeper of it. See, this is a cooperative effort. We need our wives, we need our sisters to help. And then we need our husbands and our brothers to help. And yes, men, you can plug in a vacuum cleaner and help your wife clean the house. When Jesus wanted to reach someone, how did he do it? Zacchaeus, come down from there, for today I must abide at thine house. Why did Jesus want Zacchaeus? Why did Jesus want to go into the house of Zacchaeus? Who was Zacchaeus? He was a tax collector. He was a Roman. So what was it that Jesus wanted to discuss? Why did he want to go to the house of Zacchaeus? I have a suspicion. It was not to learn more about Roman tax policy. There was a reason he wanted to go to his house. You know why? For the Son of Man, Luke 19:10, comes to seek and save the lost. And Jesus wanted to reach his heart, and he did it in his home. I want you to trace this, and there's a lesson I'm going to give you, Brother Dan, about all the times Jesus went into people's houses. We got to learn how to do it. And one of the Pharisees desired him that he would eat with him, and he went into his house. He sat down to meat. I wonder how many of us would say, oh, I'd never do that. And that's why you don't convert anybody. Brother, if they invite you over, go. Sit in their home. It's very difficult to convert people in the pews. You know why? Because in the way they walk through this door, they put a shield up. They hear very little of what you say, Dan. They hear very little of it. They understand very little of what you say. But you sit in the home and you eat with them, that's our next point, isn't it? Learn how to treat them. Hospitality. Yeah, not only invite them in your home, but let's learn how to treat people. All of a sudden, that shield drops. All of a sudden, you're having interaction and conversation, and they're digesting and reasoning. And it came to pass, as Jesus sat, many publicans and sinners came and sat down with him. And when the Pharisees saw it, they said to his disciples, "Oh, your Lord eats with publicans and sinners." And they made fun of him. But when Jesus heard this, he said unto them, "They that be whole need not a physician, but they that are sick. I will go and learn what this means. I will have mercy and not sacrifice. For I have come to call the righteous, not to call the righteous, but the sinners to repentance." Brother, why don't we do this? We don't need a think tank to do $1 million study to figure out how to convert people. What we need to do is follow the master. I mean, I can't think of a better model. When we put this school together, I said, if it's not modeled after Christ, it's not a model at all. Because it's the only model that I know of that's inspired. How did Jesus do it? He ate with people. He talked to people. He went in their homes. He created relationships with people. Don't demonize everyone outside the church building. I'm very concerned right now about our churches, and I'm concerned because I know that our culture is godless. I get it. I look at the evil. I look at the wickedness. I see, I can't even go to Walmart without being disgusted by what we see like yesterday. It's gross. So go ahead, church. Isolate yourselves from the sinners. Go ahead. Isolate yourself. Get in your church building. Lock the doors. Don't let them in. Lock your doors. Don't let them in your house. Cut ties with everybody not like you and see how long you last. So what's the doctrine? It's a biblical doctrine. The biblical doctrine is that we don't isolate ourselves from sinners because Jesus did not do that. But we insulate ourselves from their sins. I will not commit the sin with you. I will not put myself in a position where I condone the sin, but I won't isolate myself from you. So what better environment is there than to invite them in your home? It's your environment. You control it. Every Christian is commanded to display hospitality. Every Christian. You know, to be an elder, you must be proven in it. You know, you cannot serve as an elder if you don't. You know, we'll go to the ends of the earth trying to define these qualifications. I can hardly think of a sermon on hospitality. How do they treat others? There's a great lesson here with Mary and Martha, and I don't have time to go through it all. But, I find it interesting at the end of this text what Jesus says. He says, "Martha, Martha, thou art careful and troubled about a great many things." She was distracted. What was she distracted by? Her home. She was distracted because she didn't think she was prepared. And she couldn't believe the Son of God was in her home, and she's not ready for the Son of God. And her sister, instead of helping her, right, she's over there at his feet learning more about his teaching. And she's troubled about it. And what did Jesus say? "Martha, Martha, thou art troubled about a great many things, but there's one thing that's needful." Remember that word? One thing. And your sister has chosen the good part, and I won't take it away from her. I realize tonight there may be some ladies in our audience, and you're saying, "Rob, I can't have people in my home." Listen, I got a small home. I got dust bunnies in the corner. My home has the musty smell. That's what Martha thought. And she was completely distracted about things that don't matter. And there may be some ladies in the audience say, "Rob, you don't realize I don't know how to cook. I'm not a good cook. I burn cereal. I can't do it." Ladies, listen to me carefully. If you don't think you can cook this morning, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go to the KFC, get the bucket, put it in a platter. They'll never know. You do this at every fellowship meal. We never know. And we just think you're the greatest cooks, since the Colonel. And so there's ways around this. Let's go to our next point. You got to learn to listen. James 1:19, wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. Let me give you my theologic definition to this verse. You ready? It's deep. God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. You're supposed to listen twice as much as you're supposed to speak. So when I was sitting in my home, I wanted Jimmy and Sharon to speak. I don't want to interrupt them. I didn't want to talk about my daughter's basketball or my son's soccer. Now's not the time. The time is now to listen to them. Let them talk. You know what happens when they talk? You show interest, they'll give you information. It's like an intel sheet right in front of you. So when Jimmy mentioned, it's all in the book of Revelation. Now's not the time to have a Bible study on Revelation. It will never work. But what that told me is that he's religious. He believes in a judgment day. That was actually a very good, but if I could have interrupted him, right, and engaged him on a debate in the book of Revelation, it's all over, isn't it? May I submit something to y'all this morning? Here's my submission. Most people don't know enough about the first coming of Christ, much less the second. Why are you debating someone about the second coming of Christ and they don't even know about the first coming? You have taken the bait and you are ruining the Bible study. I was the world's worst of it. I always took the bait. Because if I can have a debate and win, I thought I was a champion at Bible study. And I can win the argument and lose the soul. I've done it many times. Don't take the bait. You should not be traveling down that road. Hesitate. You should listen to people. And as they're talking to you, and Jesus said unto them, take heed what you hear. Just listen. That's all I want you to just listen. Whatever it is they talk about. So when Sharon Fisher said, now in my first marriage. You think that's important to listen to? Very important. Take heed, therefore, how you hear. Look them in the eyes. Don't talk over them. Let me give you my last point. Y'all ready? My last point. Hesitate. Just hold back. I want you to hold back. So as I'm listening, I'm tempted to respond. I'm tempted to interject. I'm tempted to challenge. I'm tempted to set them straight. Because after all, I can't get him. I can't let him say those things. I've got to prove him wrong. It's the last thing you should do. What you should do is just hold back. Now, is there a biblical example of this? Absolutely. The greatest evangelist who ever lived did the same thing. Hey, tell no man. My time's not yet come. Now's not the right time. It's not that Jesus condoned everything that people did, but there were times when he said, listen, now's not the time to engage right now. Timing is very important. And there are numerous examples through the life of Christ where Jesus would say, my time's not yet come, or he spoke not a word. He said nothing. He wrote on the ground as though he heard them not. Some of the best teaching you can do is just to say nothing. And the high priest arose and said unto him, answerest thou nothing? What is it with this witness against thee? But Jesus held his peace. So what I get from these verses is that there is times when it's best not to say a word. Because you're going to do more damage by speaking than not speaking. And so when people bring up, they bring up the tongue speaking. I'm not going to climb Mount Tongue Speaking. I'm going to lose that battle. When they bring up Mount Second Coming, I'm not climbing that mountain. When they bring up Mount Miracle, Mount Instrumental Music, how about Mount Politics? You're going to ruin it. How about Mount Sports Team? No doubt you're going to be in a Bible study, and here's what's going to happen. They're going to be Longhorn fans, and it's going to be very difficult on you because they're going to make fun of the Sooners. Don't climb the mountain. It's not worth it. It's just not worth it. So I'm asking you to hesitate. I'm asking you to hold back. So I've mentioned 4 things this morning. Open your house, extend hospitality, learn to listen, and hesitate. Those are important. If you add that to the 3 things I taught you yesterday, it'll transform your evangelistic efforts. And all I'm asking you to do is be like Jesus. That's all. Just learn from the Master. No one's ever been better at Bible studies than him. Brandy Fleming walked down the aisle. She had a piece of paper in her hand. And I asked her on that piece of paper, I said, hey, Brandy, I said, who do you got? She said, I got Dustin McKinney. And so Brandy's learned that if she'll bring me a contact, the church will prospect that contact and will bring him to Christ. Now, the lesson is you've got to earn the right to have a Bible study. So if I want a Bible study, I've got to earn the right. Now, we've got to earn the right. His name was Dustin McKinney. And as she handed me this piece of paper, I said, immediately put him on the prospect list, page 105. And the church began sending the cards. We began praying. We're going to all reach out to Dustin. And Dustin, I know, because he's a basketball coach for Red Bowling Springs. I coach basketball for Cookville, meaning that when it comes to knowing this person, I have a little bit of knowledge. I don't like to play Dustin McKinney. They breed basketball players in Red Bowling Springs. But I know him just enough. So we began sending the cards. He's got cancer. And she told me it's inoperable. It's terrible. I couldn't believe it when she told me. So the church sends their cards. I get with my son about a week later. I said, hey, Jared, let's go visit Dustin McKinney. We get in the car, go down the house, knock on his door. He opens up. Hey, Rob, what's going on? I said, hey, Dustin. I said, I heard you got cancer. He said, Rob, it's terrible. I said, Dustin, I came over to help you. He said, what can you do? I said, I'm going to pray. And he said, man, I need all the prayer I can get. So we bowed our heads. We prayed. And I said, Dustin, I hope I can come back and see you again. He said, Rob, you can come back and pray every day. Don't worry, I will, because I have one mission. One thing I want, I'll get it. I went back to the church that next Sunday, and we had the nursing home ministry. I'm with one of my elders. We finished the ministry. I said, Steve, go with me. Let's go visit Dustin McKinney. He said, Rob, I don't know Dustin McKinney. I said, I'll introduce you. Went to the house, knocked on the door. He opened, hey, Rob, man, how you doing? I said, fine. Who you got with you? I said, oh, just a friend of mine, Steve. Well, Rob, come on in. So we walked inside the house, and we sat down, and I noticed all over the house were cards, lots of cards, your card, and your card. All the cards were there because you did your job. Now I get to do mine. I sat in that living room with Dustin, and I said, hey, Dustin, where all those cards come from? I don't ask questions I don't know the answers to. He said, that church you preach for, Rob, they're everywhere. They send them every day. Sometimes they help me get through the day, Rob. I said, we love you, Dustin. I said, could we pray again? He said, yeah. So we prayed before I got out of that house. I said, hey, man, I notice your yard's getting a little high there. He said, yeah, the doctor said not to get outside and mow it. Can't get under the sun. I said, huh. I said, the Willette Church of Christ will mow your lawn until you're better. The elder Steve looked at me and said, we will. You know, when you work with elders, it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. Sorry, Brother Kirk. Dan, it's a good strategy. And in any case, we got to the church that night. The elder said, Rob, we need to meet with you. Uh-oh. Ever had these meetings? So I went into the office, and they said, Rob, hey, that great call on the lawn. We can mow lawns. They said, but we know what you're trying to do. We're in. We're behind this effort. They said, Rob, take this note to Dustin McKinney. You tell him we'll pay his highest medical bill, no questions asked. Wow. I said, absolutely. Tell him not to tell anybody. I said, we make sure. I got to the house. I told him that. You ought to have seen the expression on their face. Hey, Rob, we finally found a doctor to do the surgery, Natalie said. I said, well, great, Natalie. She said, Rob, it's at Vanderbilt. I said, I'll be there. Rob, you can't go to Vanderbilt. I said, I'll be there. That day I went to Vanderbilt Hospital. I told my wife, Nicole, I said, I'll text you all day, honey. Keep the church updated. We were having what you call a day of prayer. The whole church has prayed all day. It's a delicate surgery. Only one doctor they could find willing to do it. The doctor spent all day in that surgery, longer than we ever anticipated. He comes out to the waiting room. He said, McKinney family. We raised our hand. He said, Miss McKinney, it was worse than we thought. Miss McKinney, I counted all my other surgeries. I'm a very determined doctor. Miss McKinney, I got margins all the way around it. I got it out, Miss McKinney. And as the tears dripped down our eyes, I looked at that doctor and I said, Doctor, can I pray? He said, son, you better, because I've never seen anything like it. When I left the hospital that day, I looked at Natalie. I said, Natalie, there's something I need to talk to you all about. When you're ready, will you let me know? She said, you'll be the first to know, Rob. She called. We showed up at the house. We sat on the couch right next to Dustin. Hey, Dustin, there's something we need to talk about. He says, well, what is it? I said, I'd like to know, would you like to know more about Jesus? He said, oh, Rob, I was hoping that's what it was. He said, I sure would. I said, good, because I just so happen to have these little booklets. They're called Back to the Bible. Guess what happens when you do Bible studies? Any guesses? Can you send a card? Can you send a card? Can you? Can you send a card? Can you give me a name of somebody you know that maybe is going through a life event and just needs love? You can. Kirk, can this church do this? Sharon Fisher wrote a chapter in Nicole's book, and this is for ladies. It's not just a recipe book, it's about evangelism. Sharon said the hospitality we were shown made all the difference to our willingness to get involved in a Bible study. Ladies, without you, we don't go anywhere. Thank God for Christian ladies. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back, and after this 5 minutes, we'll go to the next lesson. So glad you're here. You will need your Evangelism Simplified Guidebook. If you don't have one, we're going to go through Back to the Bible. All right, take a 5-minute break. Thank you. Lesson number 4. Yes, how are you, brother? Good. Doing good. Doing good. All right. Yeah, I'm still working on it. I'm learning. One of these days I'm going to figure this out,